Good afternoon. It's good to see you. My name is Josef Klam, and I am a pastor. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and more than that, I am a beloved child of the Most High God. I'm here to tell you I believe in the power of prayer, and it may seem odd that I have to declare that, particularly being a pastor, but it was not that long ago that my actions reflected something entirely different. Or probably better stated, my inaction reflected something entirely different. Like so many, the CC years proved to be especially trying. You know the CC years, right? You have BC, AD, and CC. CC is the COVID chaos years. In the spring of 2020, I found myself simultaneously in the crosshairs on two separate battlegrounds. As an executive pastor dealing with a lot of administrative task, I found myself in the crosshairs of a very large church with a lot of different opinions on how you should handle different things. But I also just completed 7 years serving on the Spring Branch Independent School District Board of Trustees. And so I found myself in the crosshairs of a very public and high-profile battle utilizing public education as a pawn. For me, the hardest part of those days was watching the community that I loved and that I'd served for so many years be divided and devoured by itself. My heart ached. I was grieving the loss of so many things. Friends that had been a part of our church for 20 years that felt they could no longer go on in our church because of one reason or another. Individuals that I had grown up around, that I had coached their children, that would send emails to me as a trustee accusing and claiming certain things. As the days turned into weeks, that turned into months and turned into years, I found that I'd moved from a sympathetic posture, a pastoral posture of being able to receive emails, receive these concerns, and recognize that everyone was struggling, everyone was broken. I moved from that posture to a posture of anger and resentment. I was tired of receiving the ridiculous, uninformed, and hate-inspired emails. I was tired of reading online the misinformation that was being adopted as truth. I was tired of looking at people as friend or foe rather than being able to see them as beloved children of God created in His image. And yet my heart had become so calloused and hardened that I was no longer turning to prayer. As a pastor, I found myself often faking it in the congregation, simply smiling and trying to move along. I was no longer hearing the nudging of the Spirit, and my heart was broken. On Sunday, February 19th of 2023, which happened to be the Sunday before Lent, I found myself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Shortly after noon on that Sunday, I was in the parking lot of a Whataburger picking up lunch for myself and my wife, and gunfire broke out. As I called 911 to report the gunfire, an injured man with blood dripping down his arm attempted to get into my car and started begging me to drive him to safety. He was concerned that the shooters were going to come back. What I had assumed was just a disagreement gone wrong. I later learned that it was an executed hit by two rival gangs. In the moment of the chaos, my adrenaline and my pastoral heart forced me to stay present. I found myself talking to this individual who was obviously in shock as we waited for the police to come. I found myself talking him out of holding his gun that he pulled out from under his car seat, knowing that if the police rolled up and there was a person who was obviously in shock, wandering around holding a gun, that they might not find that very helpful. And so I stayed. I gave my statements. Everything was under control, and I left. As I pulled out of the parking lot, the adrenaline fell off, and I broke down. I cried the entire drive home, playing over in my mind everything that I'd experienced, trying to do the math to see the probability of how I actually was able to go home alive rather than end up as a news story. And I knew that the next couple of days, as I found myself wrestling with this trauma, I knew I had to address it. And I had to address it on multiple fronts. I had to address it on an emotional, on a physical, and on a spiritual front. And it's not a good place to be when you have to address something in the spiritual front when you're so numb with all the other anger. And so shortly after, a few days later, I had a close friend, Lou Hauser, who's sitting over here, who reached out and encouraged me to consider taking a few days at the Serenity Retreat Center. But it was recommended that I first begin with a one-on-one session. And so I scheduled the meeting, and it just so happened that the day I had my one-on-one prayer session was the day before I was able to first see my counselor. And so I had these 2 days where I was both approaching it from a spiritual as well as from an emotional approach. You see, as I met with my 2 prayer ministers at the Hope and Healing Center of St. Martin's Episcopal Church, and I got to tell you, in that time, I was so numb, I never wrote down their names. I have the folder with their notes they gave me. If y'all are in here, please come see me. I want to give you a hug and thank you for the gift you gave me. But that's aside. What I learned was that God wanted to heal me from more than just the traumatic events in the Waterbury parking lot. God wanted to heal me from it all. He wanted to heal me from the depression that I'd been carrying over those COVID days. He wanted to heal me from the resentment that I had held on to and accumulated. I'm here to share with you that God used this beautiful ministry as an integral part to the path for my healing. I'm forever grateful to my friend Lou, who encouraged me and followed up to make sure I just didn't let it slide. I'm forever thankful for those 2 women who just sat and prayed with me, prayed over me, and asked questions. And I'm thankful to God for the Serenity Retreat Center and for the beautiful ministry and the lives that have been, are being, and will be transformed. And I want to end with this. As my prayer minister was asking me questions, she had this beautiful way about how she would just help us enter into prayer. And she would simply say, "Why don't we ask Jesus about this?" And in the heat of that moment when I was processing this event that was traumatic, she said, "Let's go and ask Jesus." And we began to pray, and within 20 seconds, I began to laugh. I don't remember really when I had laughed, like truly laughed, before that. And she just paused and saw me with my eyes open. She said, "Okay, so what did God give you?" And I remember telling her that I very clearly saw myself going to the throne of God and speaking with Jesus, saying, "Jesus, I don't want to die. I'm not afraid to die, but I don't want to die." And that's what I was afraid of. And Jesus sat with his arms wide, not like on a cross, but like this, saying, "Okay, and?" And I said, "And I don't want my kids to have to grow up without a dad. That scared me." And Jesus just kept saying, "And? And I don't want my wife to have to be a widow and go the next year." And the image of Jesus just saying, "Bring it," was a beautiful gift that helped me, along with all the other resources, experience freedom, experience deliverance, and move past a place of being able to solely focus on the anger, the fear, and the resentment. What I learned in that session is that anger is a blocking emotion. And God invited me to lay down that anger on that very day. And so in a moment, I wanted you to consider whether you might be open to scheduling a prayer session, because I promise God wants to deliver you and free you from what you may be wrestling with as well. Thank you.